Great leaders always start with their people, with those that report to them, with
Hmm.
a heavy focus on building trust and building a really strong relationship that is, built on transparency and,
Mm.
always, having their best interest at heart. And that doesn't
Yeah.
come overnight. You can't expect that to just be out of the box and say, hey, hey,
Mhm.
you need to trust me, and that's all you got to do. You have to prove.
Yeah.
You have to show that, and you have to
Hmm.
live that every single day. And a lot of
Hmm.
managers just move right past that and skip right to holding someone
Yeah.
accountable, metrics, measurements, reports, your deadlines.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Russell Teeter, who is SVP of Operations and Business Development at Class. Russell, I'm happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Joao. I'm excited to dive in and have a good conversation.
100%. Well, tell everyone to start off a little bit more about Class, what you guys are all about, who you help, and any further context that you'd like to give about the business.
Yeah, sure. So Class, we are virtual learning software, virtual classroom to be specific, built for ed tech, built for corporate learning, that takes meeting environments like Zoom, like Teams, and transforms them into an environment that's purpose built for online learning, live, synchronous learning, whether that be in the education space for K-12 and higher education, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or synchronous online classes and virtual schools, or as well and more predominantly these days in the corporate learning space for the Fortune 500 that is now onboarding employees remotely, dealing with this
Mm-hmm.
workforces, remote work, and helping them with things like sales enablement and virtual
Mm-hmm.
training, HR trainings in that live synchronous setting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think especially for that corporate side of things, it's often so, hey, here's how we've always done the training. It's like you click that button and it's like just sitting through the usual time wasted, we can call it, because people don't like it, they don't pay attention to it, and it never ends up actually leading to anything good for the team internally. So talk to me a little bit more about where, I guess, the idea of using these amazing platforms to train companies and train leaders better, where that even came from.
Yeah. So we've been around about pushing 5 years now, so we're still relatively new. And we got our start, as I mentioned, in the education space. And
Mm-hmm.
about 4.5 years ago was smack in the middle of the global pandemic. And we were formed in direct response to that in education, where just so happened that coincidentally and simultaneously, Zoom decided to open their software development kit to allow developers to build on top of the Zoom software. And our CEO, Michael Chasen, who was the former founder and CEO of Blackboard, which is one of the first kind of largest ed tech companies in
Mm-hmm.
learning management solutions,
Mm-hmm.
saw an opportunity to support what was happening in education, wherever all the learners, faculty members, professors, educators, students all around the globe were thrust onto meeting environments and
Mm-hmm.
expected to, receive quality online instruction. And a lot of challenges
Mm-hmm.
come out of that. But with Zoom's software development kit being opened, there's an opportunity to develop a purpose-built solution for
Mm-hmm.
teaching and learning and delivering, engaging sessions. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a couple years, we've expanded the product to not just incorporate Zoom, but also Teams. So we take Zoom or Teams now and add all sorts of teaching and learning tools on top of those tools. We're built on the
Mm-hmm.
technology of Zoom and Teams, the back end audio
Mm.
layer, which is a big advantage, obviously, in going to market and differentiating ourselves against competing tools. Is that we get to have the world class scalability and audio
Yeah.
layer of Zoom and Teams.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. And what do you think are the biggest challenges in creating something like what you guys have, where the entire relationship or the entire execution happens online?
Mm.
I think there can always be pros and cons to anything, but I think there's such a misconception about, hey, online learning is not effective and it has to be in person and all these things. So what do you guys do you think the biggest challenges that come through from possible clients, I guess, is the education and them not having a certain belief or a hesitancy of adopting these things, or is it the actual execution of being able to transfer the training and the education through to their employees?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I'll answer that in the context of sort of our corporate use case and corporate
Sure.
learning.
Yeah.
Um, so it's certainly a challenge, but there's always been that sort of asynchronous learning, which is your compliance training where you
Yeah.
click through once a year and you got to do that. That's always been there, and it's going to be there, for the foreseeable future for those sort of compliance related trainings. But that's not quite what we're solving for. Really, we're solving
Mm-hmm.
for that synchronous live experience where you need that human connection. You need
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity to get feedback live and connect with your peers, and have something that's much more engaging and live. Uh,
Mm.
in particular, with in the back end of the pandemic and corporate learning, with the largest companies in the world and the majority of companies in the world offering remote work, and
Mm-hmm.
dealing with distributed workforces and employees that are spread out all over the globe, and the challenge of acquiring talent and attracting talent needing to be remote in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Companies are now forced to look at, well, we can't just offer learning asynchronously for leadership development and sales training and onboarding processes, and we can't do that in person anymore because we have this remote workforce. We need a quality online tool that differentiates our
Mm-hmm.
our global L&D function and how we onboard our employees. So we come in where most companies are dealing with that challenge, but left with only solutions such as Zoom or Teams or
Yeah.
other
And
video
figure it out.
conferencing. Exactly. And using tools that are built for meetings, and they're great for meetings. They're great for one-on-ones and conversations, but they're not great for learning and development. So we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of right place, right time in response to the trends of the market and
Mm-hmm.
distributed workforces and online
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm. And is there thank you for sharing that, by the way. That gives me some good context. And is there a specific thing that a lot of the companies that you guys work with say, how this is the best thing that you guys give us from the entire relationship, like this is where we get the most value from, and it really allows us to do the thing that we want to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and
I can assume. Yeah.
yeah, and if in a different time and place, I'd give you a product demo right now to show you all the things, but we won't do that today.
Yeah.
If you think about a typical Zoom meeting, there's if you're trying to lead a training or take learners through leadership development, whatever the use case may be for online
Hmm.
learning. In Zoom or Teams, I keep naming those two. There are others, but those are the
Of
dominant.
course. Yeah.
There's light or no engagement analytics to determine how effective your training was, how engaged the learners were, what they retained, what they didn't retain. There's very light ability to leverage learning content from other tools and other platforms and third party websites. You
Hmm.
typically are beholden to dropping a link in chat or
Yeah.
screen sharing. So those tools have some basics like you can roster and see who's there. You can screen share, and you might be able to do a poll. Class
Hmm.
adds 10x of those types of features into our solution. That in totality, when you add all of them up, it's
Mm.
it's kind of a night and day type solution to leading a training on class versus
Hmm.
Zoom or Teams. We do a whole lot with improvements to breakout rooms that
Hmm.
make them much more engaging, much more interactive, and give the instructor or the trainer insights into what's going on in each breakout room.
Mm.
Orchestrate that as close to an in-person type feel as you can get online.
Hmm.
And maybe the final point is, there's things that you could never replicate fully via online learning as compared to
Mm.
in-person learning, and we know that there's always going to be that drop in human connection and that
Hmm.
just the benefit you get from being face to face. The area where we think that class allows organizations to go further and offers more in online learning and virtual learning than you can
Mm.
get in person is the data and the analytics piece
Hmm.
that can lay on top of online learning. We can measure
Yeah.
how effective the training was. We can measure live engagement. We can do also
Hmm.
a whole slew of data and analytics to determine the efficacy of your online training
Yeah.
program and each individual trainer or instructor, and a whole lot of
Hmm.
learning to glean from that and analyze and improve over time. So
Yeah. That's
where we
awesome.
go further.
Yeah, it sounds like, hey, you guys are not only giving them and feeding them the data to be able to achieve a lot of these things, but it's telling them what to do with that data as well. It's like, here's what this means, here's what you can do to improve XYZ, and here's how XYZ is also very good. That can lead into ABC. So I think that's really cool. And that's what it sounds like to me, but
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
no, that's 100% it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what do you think is I don't know exactly what the goals are for the company. So there might be a million different things. They're like, hey, here's what we want to achieve. Here's where we want to be. But as you're looking at those goals, what do you think are some of the things that can be obstacles along the way to achieving the things that you guys want to achieve internally?
Yeah. So there's naturally some kind of macro level market forces that you push up against, that most software companies push up against, most companies push up against.
Mm-hmm.
The economic conditions and
Yeah.
macro sort of trends and where preferences are moving towards, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
We have those, of course. Ours are specifically around complacency with the status quo. Naturally, we have to position ourselves as something different than a nice to have, right? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
common trope, among those selling software, is that how do we become a need to have versus a nice
Yeah.
to have? To some organizations, some schools, some institutions, we will forever be a nice to have, something that goes further than web conferencing tools like Zoom and Teams to improve online learning. To
Mm-hmm.
some that value that less, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and are okay with the status quo of what Zoom or Teams provides, and that's okay. But what's important to us is finding the right buyers, the right
Mm-hmm.
personas, the right use cases, and when we do, they view us as a need to have. When we're
Yeah.
talking to the learning and development departments at a Fortune 500 company that has a whole team of individuals
Mm-hmm.
who've been hired specifically to improve learning and development programs at whichever the company may be, uh,
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones that that see our product and view it as a need to have right away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about finding those people, and that's always a challenge.
Yeah, and is a lot of opportunities are a lot of those opportunities coming to you guys from word of mouth referrals, people who are very happy in what you guys do, and like, hey, you guys, whoever they know, you need to have this as well. Is that where a lot of them come from, or are there other avenues too?
So there's definitely the range of avenues, diverse
Mm-hmm. Of
marketing channels, and sort of split on how we
course.
kind of source leads and and go after certain company targets. But
Sure.
in as is true, I imagine, with a lot of companies,
Yeah.
when you find the first, call it 10 to 20 sort of lighthouse flagship customers that are going to have outsized impact for you long term if you white glove treatment them, and and apply a ton of resource to making sure that they adopt, they have success,
Mm-hmm.
that they expand, and that they're happy, and that they're advocates. uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's where success compounds, is when you really focus in on
Yeah.
who's that first group of lighthouse customers that
Mm-hmm.
hold up in the market, into the rest of potential buyers, and say, here are our case studies, here are our use cases. You may
Yeah.
know these people. When you get into sort of a narrow focused segment like we're in, and use case and persona, a lot of people know each other, and a lot of people can pick up the phone and say, hey, I saw you all work with Class. Tell me more. When that
Mm-hmm.
phone call happens, you have to be confident that they are going
Mm-hmm.
to say, give the good word. And it can be a very tight knit community
Yeah.
of learning and development leaders. So we focus really hard on that sort of network of
Mm-hmm.
positive customer referrals, knowing
Yeah.
they're going to talk to each other anyway. So we need to get ahead of that.
Yeah, 100%. I like how you described that, the white glove treatment. I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that before. I don't know how, but I like that because it's the highest leverage activity that pretty much any business can do to be able to achieve so many outsized return, as you said, that compounds.
Oh, yeah.
So I think so many companies rely on word of mouth and referrals, which is obviously a great thing, and it should be, I guess, supplemented and increased as much as possible. But it's a reliance on it that doesn't have any particular strategy behind it, and it's like anything else that comes through is like, pray to God something comes through, because if it doesn't, then we're just kind of probably out of business, which is not.
Yeah, I think I'd add one more in there too. It's important, and when you're entering into a new vertical, like I mentioned, we started in education. We've sort of
Yep.
pivoted over time to this corporate
Corporate.
learning
Yeah.
use case, and and overall sort of focus of our product and company.
Mm-hmm.
Important to get out ahead and position yourself as a thought leader in the
Mm.
space and publish
Yeah.
thought leadership material so that there's that inherent
Mm-hmm.
trust that's in the background. Perhaps if they see something posted on social that is a useful piece of thought leadership that
Mm-hmm.
has plants a little seed in their mind, whether it immediately yields a sale or not. Oftentimes it's a long-term play, but you've got to have that foundation of
Mm-hmm.
trust via thought leadership efforts and
Yeah.
thought leadership, priorities and focuses.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. That trust factor of it is like, hey, here's why I should listen to these people is oftentimes overlooked. I'll just use those words to not say anything else. If I had to ask you, Russell, actually, this has been a question that has become kind of a frame of the podcast. I've been asking it to everybody, and it's going to be no different for you. Let's say you had a magic wand, and you could just wave this amazing wand, and it could solve just one thing in the business, a challenge, an obstacle, whatever it might be, that would allow you guys to reach your growth goals just like that. What's the one thing that you want to achieve? Or sorry, that you want to solve? If you want to share what you want to achieve, then share that as well. But what's the one thing you'd like to solve?
Yeah, no, it's so many are coming to mind that are just hyper specific to class that
I mean, it's the business that you're in, so that
yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I'll first answer one that's hyper specific to class, and as I go
Good.
along, hopefully there's something a bit more bigger picture, maybe broadly applicable.
Good.
We've built a product and solution that is it is game changing and first of its kind, but inherently there's a sort of flaw that is a challenge for us, and it likely will remain to be a challenge because of the product we've decided to build is contingent upon the back end audio video layer and software and of Zoom and Teams. When Zoom or Teams makes a change to their SDK, their software development kit, how their code is written, that has downstream ripple effects, cascading effects to us that are sometimes debilitating and hard to plan for and predict. So there's a challenge there that if I could wave a magic wand, it would be that we would always be one step ahead of changes that were happening to the back end code of our software that would never have any issue with unknown bugs, instability, errors.
Yeah.
But that's again specific to class.
Sure.
But if you're entering into building a new product or trying to grow a new company and you're figuring out what solution to build, my advice is maybe don't build one that is dependent upon live moments and live learning. Where you think about a learning tool like an LMS, a learning management solution. The moments of a user using that is kind of two-dimensional. It's a refreshed page and whatever is there. When there's a bug or a hiccup in a solution that doesn't have live video associated with it, it's easier to hide. When you have live video associated with a product, and it is so dependent upon the moment-to-moment interactions without any delay and any sort of hiccup or challenge with the actual audio video piece of it. That helps, but when you're dependent upon that, the bugs compound and the challenges of product are much more visible because you're dealing with live interaction, and so that's just maybe forewarning for anyone who is entering into the building on a web conferencing solution. To consider the complexity of such a thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that people often wouldn't look at either. It's one of those things that as you're going through the process, like, oh, this is something that we're gonna have to deal with now. So thank you for sharing that. And you actually made me curious. So I want to ask one other question before I ask my final question. So you don't have to go crazy into detail if you don't want to. But what do you think is the hardest part of growing class?
That's interesting. I think there is. As a result of the pandemic, two things happened. Many things happened, but specific to class, there were either a group of schools, institutions, and companies that looked at online learning and had a bad experience with it, were ill prepared, didn't have the right tools, but realized that there's more that could be done better, and
Sure.
they realize that there are better tools, and that
Hmm.
there is value in providing a better online learning solution and product and offering to their employees.
Hmm.
And those are the ones that obviously that's where our market is, and that's who we talk to. But there's
Hmm.
also this big, very large group of schools, educators, institutions, colleges, universities, parents of learners and students
Hmm.
that on the back end of COVID and throughout COVID hated online learning and are
Mm.
completely averse to it now because of the bad experience they have.
Yeah.
So naturally entering into that conversation with
Hmm.
something about online live synchronous learning and
Mm.
taking classes remotely or virtually, there's an allergic reaction by a lot
Yeah.
of people just because of what they went through with.
Yeah. That connotation is there.
Exactly, and that's
Hmm.
a challenge for us to push up against that and and be
Hmm.
successful in spite of that. But there's enough people, there's enough schools, institutions, companies that didn't have that reaction or did, but are
Hmm.
open-minded to there being a better way that we have enough
Hmm.
runway.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, just educating them on how there's so much that they can leverage as opposed to the bad experience or
Right.
the couple bad experiences they had. Awesome. Final question that I have here for you, Russell. It's actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So, are you ready to hear the
Yeah,
question?
I'm very interested.
Here is the question that they asked. What do you feel makes the biggest difference between a good manager and a great leader?
Hmm, that is a good question. That was for me.
That was to you, but they had no idea who you were. But they did this. The question was still directed to you. Yeah, so it's yours to answer.
Yeah, so I think that again, there's a lot of answers, and I'll try to summarize things down to a couple things that I've learned from the greatest leaders I've
Hmm.
worked for, and tried to uphold myself and embody. Um, Great leaders always start with their people, with those that report to them, with
Hmm.
a heavy focus on building trust and building a really strong relationship that is, built on transparency and,
Hmm.
always, having their best interest at heart. And that doesn't
Hmm.
come overnight. You can't expect that to just be out of the box and say, hey,
Hmm.
you need to trust me, and that's all you got to do. You have to prove
Yeah.
you have to show that, and you have to
Hmm.
live that every single day. And a lot of
Hmm.
managers just move right past that and skip right to holding someone
Yeah.
accountable, metrics, measurements, reports, your deadlines.
Hmm.
uh, and employees and direct reports are so much more likely to work really
Hmm.
hard for the goal, for the vision, for the mission, if they believe that you have their best interest at heart,
Hmm.
and they can share with you, and you're not and they can speak honestly and truthfully with you because you do
Hmm.
them. That's at the starting point. But there's all but throughout people management, once you have that built-in trust that's so important with a great
Hmm.
leader versus a manager, um,
Hmm.
being able to communicate at all times to those that report to you the why, the bigger picture, the vision, how it connects to the goal, what this work means, and
Hmm.
being able to draw a direct line to, like I said, the vision and the bigger picture. Uh,
Yeah.
Too often managers miss that part, and it's
Hmm.
just about the tasks and the project of the moment, and
Yeah.
driving the deadline or whatever it may be. Uh,
Yeah.
and if you can remember to from the get-go always invest in that trust in that relationship,
Hmm.
and rapport and belief in one another, and then regularly, in every project, tie it to the vision, tie it to the bigger picture.
Hmm.
You'll have a pretty high performing team, and that's what
Hmm.
I hope to do at all times. But I've
Yeah.
certainly had my missteps and forgotten some of those along the way, and had
Hmm.
to learn the lesson the hard way when somebody was wanting to leave the company or didn't want to work for me anymore. And I can always
Hmm.
get back to that I do those things
Hmm.
well to my best ability, and sometimes not.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like it's forgetting the person and the purpose and just focusing on the task at hand
Yeah.
which of course, as you said, just drives the disconnect. Interesting. Huh? I really like that insight. I'm glad that that question was asked towards you. Russell, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, or maybe a little bit more about class?
Yeah. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. You can search for Russell Teeter, and I'll pop up. There's not too many of me, but Class is a really easy website to remember. Class.com. It's easy enough. So please do come check us out. And if I've said anything interesting to anyone listening, we'd love to talk to you and learn a little bit more about what you all do for online learning.
Amazing, Russell. Thank you so much for your time, and to everyone else, I'll see you on the next episode. Take
Thanks,
care.
Joao.